Is current Star Trek Star Trek? What do I mean by that? What I mean is that Star Trek, you know, at its inception and according to its creator, which is the only thing that matters really, just like George Lucas is the only thing matter when it comes to what Star Wars should be, right? He believed in a future where humans were more evolved, or rather past the vices of whatever we currently have, right? That meant going past our savage, murderous impulses, beyond greed and drug use, beyond cynicism and nihilism, beyond all the nonsense we see in current day world and during the time of Gene, which has been about 100 years, almost 100 years since his birth, right? In 1921, I believe he was born. He believed in that type of future, and that is what Star Trek was. Throughout, even with the flaws of Star Trek under Berman, for the most part, it was what Gene envisioned. And you'll have certain people disingenuously, or rather ignorantly, using one-offs as examples of how, Star Trek was dark, DS9 and this and that. But they miss a fundamental point. And that point is that those were one-offs, and those particular examples were the exception, and they were nowhere near as dark as Picard. And overall, at the end of the day, the holistic core, the core of what is Star Trek remained. The feeling of being hopeful, feeling of goodness in certain characters. Because even when Sisko, in the episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, in the Pale Moonlight, was an accessory to murder of a Romulan ambassador in order to get them to join the Federation alliance against the Dominion, at the end, as he's making his monologue, you felt in the end, this was still a good man. Inside, he was still a good man, trying to do good. With the characters in the current Trek, I don't feel that. I feel that they're pompous, arrogant. I feel that they're dark and nihilistic. They're all the same copy and paste. A lot of the plot from Star Trek Discovery seems to be the same thing with Picard. Certain fans theorizing, hey, buddy, wait till you watch the whole show. It's gonna be about saving and bringing back hope and the Federation. I'm like, isn't that what Discovery Season 3 is about? And all these same three characters are the same, giving up, hopeless, this and that, leading Starfleet, this and that, with Rios and Picard and Raffi, right? So, and this is even backed up, right? So we're in this future where humans are beyond an evolved human, intellectual. They don't give in to their vices, except unless you're a Starfleet admiral, then you do, right? But the point was, you always overcame that. You always became better, right? And the overall structure, regardless of the flaws and the one-offs, was that of hope, of evolution, of goodness, of optimism, of being higher than the vices that held us current humans in the 20th and 21st century back, right? Even when you had that one-off admiral doing this crazy batshit plan, and you overall structure of Starfleet supported stopping that type of person, right? The overall structure of the Federation, the courts and everything supported living up to those ideals rather than saying, being cynical, nihilistic, he's right, we need to be more militaristic and this and that. It wasn't like that. The overall structure, the core remained. And when I hear what Gene's vision was, as I mentioned about evolved humans beyond their vices and this and that, and then I hear what the previous, I suppose, current previous showrunner Michael Chabana has to say, is that he purposefully changed the universe of Star Trek to be filled with flawed humans, imperfect humans, which is the antithesis of Star Trek, of Gene's vision, and thus antithesis of what Star Trek is supposed to be. And this is why I say this is not Star Trek. Modern Star Trek is only Star Trek by name. It is not Star Trek. It is not Star Trek. It is not Star Trek. The Federation and Starfleet are those things only by name. They're not Starfleet. They're not the Federation. They are something else. They are generic sci-fi in order to please a larger audience that Star Trek was never meant for. It always had a niche audience, right? You stick to handling your money well, unlike Kurtzman, who's been doing terrible at handling money, spending it like a crazy sugar girl to her sugar daddy, CBS All Access, spending it willy-nilly. You know, you would think CBS would try to hire a competent producer like Rick Berman, who always managed to stay within the budget and use the money wisely in the movies and especially in the shows. Star Trek doesn't have to be expensive. But they want to have this flashing gore, cool factor, shock value. Ooh, we're so cool, in order to get the cool kids into the club. And that's what I think would happen with Star Trek. You had fake nerds, cool kids trying to be nerds because it's cool now. And Alex Kurtzman getting some legit nerds as well, like Michael Chabon, come in and do this to Star Trek. And it's very frustrating, it's sad, but it is reality, I suppose. It is what it is. But you know, that's why I don't think the current Trek is Star Trek. It's not Gene's vision. It's something else. And we see this with Seven of Nine's character in Star Trek Picard. Just one example. There's many examples. Just one example. When you look at Voyager of what Seven of Nine was, she was fighting to gain her humanity back. She was never this ruthless killer as she started to evolve into more of a human thing. She would never become this type of killer. You would have to do a lot more and show a lot more. They didn't earn it in that episode. You know, have Chakotay die or have Janeway and betray her, or have, I don't know, Harry Kim or something. I don't know. Something crazy happened much more than Icheb dying. And then killing Icheb as well in that brutal fashion. Nothing in Star Trek has been this brutal to this level, right? They're rated TVMA. I wouldn't show this to my kids. I wouldn't let my kids watch this, like how many Star Trek fans watched it as a kid. Their parents probably wouldn't have let them watch Star Trek if this was Star Trek. Why are they all trying to be realistic? We have plenty of sci-fi that are quote-unquote realistic, but they're all dystopian. Why is Star Trek trying to be like every other sci-fi? Star Trek is supposed to go against the grain and be a utopia. That's what Star Trek is. It's utopian science fiction. It's challenging to write. That's the challenge. It challenges us to think. But these writers, they just want a paycheck. They just want to spend money. They don't care about it. They just care about merchandise and this and that and Bad Robot and Secret Hideout trying to do their thing and make themselves famous, or rather, make themselves bigger. I guess it's not love. It's not love. It's utter disregard. It's utter greed, like, for these types of franchises. We see this with the recent episode of Doctor Who, for example. But Seven of Nine's character just killing so brutally, so casually the human life after all that progress. When I watched Voyager and I saw Seven as a hero, seeing her like this, I just can't watch Voyager in the same way anymore. And I suppose for some people, they'll say they don't care, they think it's good progression. But would you feel that way if at some point Picard just became a racist? They killed Will Riker and Deanna Troi or something? Right? We always say those things about characters we don't care about. When it comes to characters we care about, we would really be pissed. We would really be upset because we know that's not who those characters are. But because some people don't care about 7 and 9, I suppose, it's fine. Right? Change is good. Change is fine when it makes sense. When it's in line with the core aspect of something. When it's not that thing anymore. You can't call it that thing. It's something else. That's why you have revolutions. Right? Communism is not capitalism. Star Trek is not Lord of the Rings or The Expanse. Star Trek is Star Trek. Once you change it into something else, it's no longer Star Trek. That's why Star Trek right now is just Star Trek by name. It's no longer Star Trek. And that saddens me. I wanted to see Picard one last time before Patrick Stewart inevitably passed from this world. I wanted to see DS9 characters back inevitably before those actors passed away. We're already losing actors. We lost Aaron Eisenberg, rest in peace. We lost Renee, right, who played Odo on Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Who's next? Cisco? Avery Brooks? Right? I wanted CBS to create an anthology series of some kind, with those characters, and then kind of create a transition to a new Star Trek into the future, right? Stop making these prequels. They create all types of continuity issues. And I recommend you check out the YouTube channel Major Grin. He creates these compilation of Star Trek, comparing the past Treks and the modern Treks, and basically showing the continuity errors in those shows, as well as moral philosophical differences between them. And he's really good. Give him a subscribe. Follow his channel. He does great edits. But anyways, yeah, that's just me rambling incoherently for about 10 minutes. thank you for listening. If you got this far, please like, subscribe, and share your comments. Maybe you disagree with me, and you know what? That's fine. That's okay. We can disagree. That's what fandom is about. Enjoyment is subjective, right? But what is the core of something? That's not subjective because it's defined by that creator and it's defined by Gene. And Michael Chabon contradicted him in those news articles that I read that you can check out too, where he's fundamentally changing the universe of Star Trek from the perfect, enlightened humans to the imperfect, flawed ones. And that, my friends, is not Star Trek.